Howdy, it is me, Dahadi Lewis, and I am here on YouTube. This is the first time. Do not despise small beginnings. We had technical difficulties, but we are here. Today, I want to talk to you about establishing a new norm in a prolonged pandemic. And so I'm really excited about today's topic because, this is the new site. This is Weekdays with Dahadi, now transitioning to where life exists. And this is going to be the new norm for us as a whole. We are going to be talking about each and every week. We're going to be talking about different things. And so today is going to be Monday, the time where I'm going to be sharing or where I'm at, what's going on. We're going to take a topic each week. And this is where I want you guys to give me feedback on. This is what you think about the topic. This is what you feel. And then what we'll do is that on Wednesday is going to be where the rubber meets the road. And I'm going to be taking the subject matters where you disagree, what you need. And then on Wednesday, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what does it look like for us to implement some of the things that we'll be talking about. And then Friday will be still Feelings Fridays, and we'll still be able to kind of walk back and forth of what it looks like from an emotive standpoint. It's kind of where are you? What do you feel? And we'll be answering the question, what do I feel and what do I need? And so again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dahadi Lewis. I'm the host of this. I am a lead pastor of Blueprint Church and vice president of the Send Network. And really what today is all about, and really what this podcast is all about, is called Where Life Exists. And this is Where Life Exists. And it's a podcast about disciple making in the public square, where we're going to talk about everyday issues from a biblical and balanced perspective. Over this first week, basically what I'm going to be doing is establishing a foundation. And as we're establishing a foundation, we are going about this idea of coming alongside you as we navigate all the voices, all the different things that will be taking place each and every week. And that's really what we're doing. There are so many voices, so many things happening on a consistent basis. And what we will be doing is this, having that interaction. And this is going to be a live topic, so you can put all of your comments in the live chat and we'll get a chance to interact with you on a consistent basis. This time was going to be anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour, just like what we did with Weekdays with Dahadi. And again, I'll be on every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Today, we're going to be talking about culture. And that's what I'll be doing each and every day, is I will be kind of bringing in from a perspective, just kind of where we are and kind of in the idea of what does this look like for us as we begin to engage. And then, so I'll set it up with about 10 minutes of just setup, and then we'll have 20 minutes of being able to engage and go back and forth with you. All right. So today we're talking about this idea of establishing culture, right? The bottom line is that we need to establish a new norm in a in this pandemic, in a prolonged pandemic. And the question becomes is how do we go about doing that? And so we're going to be hitting on that. And I want to give you four things that is really going to be important for you establishing a culture in the new norm. I agree with the author who says culture eats strategy. Oftentimes we will go in and begin to start thinking about like culture, our strategy. I need to create a strategy for something. I need to create a strategy for this or for that, and to implement this new thing, or a strategy for my children, or a strategy for myself. And then we'll create lots and tons of strategy for a new norm. But the problem is that we are putting strategies in a culture that's not conducive for growth. And so the question becomes is how do we establish culture? How do we establish culture to help us to be able to implement these strategies? And so there's four things that we want to do in order for us to establish culture, right? Number one, that we want to establish a culture, we have to teach on it. We have to teach on establishing culture. Like we got to teach ourselves, we got to read, we got to study, we got to understand what type of culture we are trying to understand or we're trying to cultivate within our context. The old phrase is true. You teach what you know, but you reproduce who you really are. And I think that that's going to be so significant, because you can create all the strategies in the world, but you ultimately are going to fall back. So you have to reinvigorate or reinvent what does it mean for us to establish a new norm or to establish a new culture? And so this is really where it's going to be important for us to be able to do that. So we got to teach on it, or we got to learn a new culture. The second thing that we have to do is that we have to model it. We have to model it. If you're going to get beyond just simply you, right, just doing this, that you don't live your life in a vacuum. There are family, there's friends, there's whether it's a staff or anything, that there's more than just you, that you have to be able to understand if you're going to establish a new culture. And in the midst of this prolonged pandemic, we need to establish a new norm, because the reality is that the old is no longer that. Like, we are now homeschool parents. There's so many different things that are impacting us, and we got to establish a new reality, a new norm in what we're doing. And so the way we have to do is that we have to model it. We have to model. It's not enough just to simply teach it. You have to show people. You have to show others, because like we said, you teach what you know, but you reproduce who you are. Communication, people buy in more to communication simply based on your nonverbals. This is communication 101. I can be saying one thing, but if my behavior is doing something else, then we're simply missing everything. We're missing the point. So if I said, I'm sad, I'm happy, which one do you believe? Do you believe the words that I'm saying, or do you believe the verb or the nonverbal expression? You believe the nonverbal expression. So if you're going to establish a culture, it's not enough just to simply say, hey, to teach on it, you have to actually do it. This is so critical and so important for us to do, that you have to model it. Do we see this in Joshua chapter 24? He says, choose ye this day who you're going to serve. As for me and my house, I'm going to serve the Lord. And that's really important. On one end, you can teach. And that's what in Joshua 24, what he did is that he goes through and he teaches on all of that. But then at the core of the message, he ends and he says, listen, after preaching and after teaching, after all of these things, I'm just going to pause, and then I'm going to model it for you. Now you're going to have to make a decision. As for me, as for my house, we're going to serve the Lord. And that's really what Joshua did. Joshua established a boundary. He says, I'm going to stand on this side. Come. The bottom line is, for most of us in this new, whether it's you're trying to model before your children, your husband, your spouse, your loved ones, or just even a staff culture, you can say one thing, but you have to then model it. You have to model it. Which leads me to the third point. You have to teach it, you have to model it, and the third thing is you have to prioritize it. You have to restructure your life. Over and over again, I remember throughout time, churches or people would always say, hey, we need to be out sharing our faith. We need to be out sharing our faith. They were trying to develop a culture of people sharing the gospel, people going out and being missionaries. But the problem is that their structure did not say the same. What was going on is that they would teach on it, and then they probably even would model it themselves. But the problem that they would do is that they would then say, all right, but you need to be out sharing your faith where life exists. But the problem is that every single day, I want you here at the church on Sundays. So we're going to do a Sunday a Sunday night service. We're going to do a Monday night prayer meeting. We're going to do a Tuesday night, deacon board. Then we're going on Wednesday night. We're going to do this. And so every single day, they had something that was in the church, right? But then they would say and they would preach on Sunday that we need to be outside the church sharing our faith. But our structure would say, no, come to the church, and we're going to measure obedience and faithfulness based upon who comes to the church building. So if we're going to build culture, and if we're going to establish a new norm in the midst of this prolonged pandemic, we have to understand this idea of establishing culture. You got to teach on it. You personally have to model it. And then thirdly, we also have to create a culture. We have to establish a culture by prioritizing it, restructuring. Like, if it is about doing ministry where life exists, then your system, your structure needs to also kind of reinforce that idea as well, which leads me to the fourth and final one. And the fourth and final one is that we have to celebrate. We have to celebrate it. People want to be celebrated. People want to both matter and to belong. And the question becomes is that if we're going to establish a new norm in the midst of a prolonged pandemic, we got to understand how to establish this new norm. That is so going to be so critical for us, because whether it's your family, whether it's your children, whether it's even yourself, they usually say it takes it used to say 21 days or however many weeks to establish a new norm. And there's spiritual disciplines that you're going to have to implement on a consistent basis for you in order to establish it. But if you're like me, you want to know if is this being helpful? Is it fruitful? And so in the way that we're able to be fruitful is by establishing or celebrating, having those times that you can come and you can say, oh, that's a success. Whether it's a small success or a big success, there is success to that. And so that's really important for us to be able to celebrate. So the question becomes is, what are ways that you're celebrating yourself? What are ways that you're trying to celebrate the new norm that you're doing? Like, what are things that you would even consider celebrating, right? And that's one of the things that you're going to do, because if you don't do that, what you're going to see is you're going to find yourself just not doing it. You're going to find yourself stopping, right? And so I think it's really important for us to be able to do that. So if we're going to establish a new norm in a prolonged pandemic, it is important for us to recognize on all of these fronts, on how we are going to go about doing this. We got to teach on it. We have to model it. We have to reprioritize or prioritize it, and then we have to celebrate it. So what do I mean by that? All right. What does that look like for us on a consistent basis? How do we celebrate? You know, one of the things in this podcast is talking about this idea of where life exists. For those of you who know and follow Blueprint and follow me, you know that is the reason why we exist as a church. Our mission statement is to unleash healthy people to do ministry where life exists. So the question becomes is, what does that look like? What does that mean? How do we develop that culture within our church? You know, and we just basically talk to it. So every single month, we just ended a month about what we call our DNA Sundays. And every single month and every single year during the month of August, we take 4 to 5 weeks and we go over our DNA, because we need to understand, we need to teach on it. Right? So this is something that we keep before our people on a consistent basis for us to do that. And so I think that that's really critical. So for you, that you're in this new normal in a prolonged pandemic, how are you going to establish culture? I think one of the things is that you have to teach. You have to teach yourself, and you have to kind of refuel yourself. You have to think about this thing more often. You have to teach your children. You have to keep it before you. This is what the Bible tells us in Deuteronomy chapter 6. In Deuteronomy 6, it talks about this idea of, you know, as you wake up, as you go to bed, as you sit in your house, as you walk on the streets, teach your children, right? This is basically establishing a culture. What the culture in Deuteronomy 6 is that you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and you should love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. This is the culture that they are trying to cultivate. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. So how do we establish that culture within our household? We put it everywhere. We let them know. We create these teachable moments, pointing our children back to this new reality, or this reality that the Lord is one, and that we are to fall more in love with him and fall more in love with our Maker. That is what this is about. So whatever it is, whatever you're trying to do, this is about culture building. So what is the culture that you're trying to build? I want you guys to start putting in the comments, what is that culture? What are some things that you're trying to culture? And we'll begin to implement this. You know, we'll talk about just practical ways, but we have to teach on it. The second thing that we have to do is that we have to model it. We have to model it. If we're trying to model the fact that the Lord our God is one, right? If we're trying to model the fact that we are to cultivate a relationship that is falling more in love with God and more in love with one another, then it is imperative for us to show that, because again, you teach what you know, but you reproduce who you are. So how do you model that? How do you model that for your children? How do you model that even in your home, right? The thing that you have to do is that you got to figure out ways, rhythms that you have. We've been talking about rhythms here at Blueprint, you know, and even the missional. How do we become missionaries? And what are some rhythms that we have? That you begin to look at the different rhythms, and you begin to ask the question is, how does my life demonstrate the culture I'm trying to present, or I'm trying to produce, or create, or establish, right? Within this new norm of this prolonged pandemic. That is so critical for us. And then the third thing is that you got to reprioritize your life, because one of the things that you'll recognize when you begin to ask yourself that question, you'll begin to ask yourself, all right, how do I, right, model that? How do I reflect that? Am I the type of person that reflects the culture? And then I think that's when we begin to see yes or no. And then what do I need to reorient? What do I need to reprioritize? What do I need to restructure in my life? Because the old adage is true that your life is perfectly set up to get what you are currently getting, right? And if what you are currently getting is what you want, then don't change anything. But if you want something different, then you have to change. You have to reorient. You have to restructure and reprioritize to establish a new foundation or a new culture. And so that's going to be critical for us in order to establishing this new normal. So again, if we're talking about where life exists, if we're talking about establishing a new normal or falling more in love with the Lord our God is one, the question becomes is how do I do that? How am I structured? Am I getting up and am I focusing on the fact that my God is an awesome God and he is one? And what am I doing as it relates to cultivating that peace? And I think that that's going to be so critical for us to restructure, reprioritize. I'm currently going through a reprioritization of my life right now, right? Because I want to keep the main things the main thing. And I want to give myself more room to fall more deeply in love with God and be more connected with friends and family. I need to create space. And I think that that's going to be critical for us, especially in this new norm, especially where we can spend all of our time in front of a computer. We have to do that. And so I think that that's going to be a very critical and a very important factor for us. And then the last thing is, how do I celebrate it? How do I celebrate it? I woke up the other morning, and it was just like, I'm going back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. And I was just singing the song, and I was just kind of like reflecting. I was like, man, Lord, that's really what this is about. That's what all this is about. That returning back to the core essence of this is about relationship. It's relationship with you. It's relationship with myself. It's relationship with your people. It's relationship with my neighbors. It is about relationship. And I need to create space. And I need to celebrate that. So when I meet my new neighbor, when I see someone, man, I was just like, man, I'm celebrating. And I'm like, man, this was exciting, because really for people like me, who is all about trying to accomplish tasks and accomplish things, it's real simple for me just to be like, oh man, forget it. Right? A productive day is a day when I've accomplished things off my checklist, off my task list. But I found myself oftentimes not creating relationship. So how am I cultivating relationship, not as a task, but how am I creating space? And there is discipline. But the question becomes is how am I celebrating that? When that happens, it's like, man, I got to just say, Lord, thank you for allowing me to celebrate, to be with this person today. And man, I learned so much, and I was so helpful, and I was connected. And so that's really what this is about, is just being able to figure this out as we establish the new norm. And so again, this is the first day of Where Life Exists. Do not despise small beginnings. We are like, I'm seeing things on the screen. The internet connection is this, going low, all of these things. But we'll be back again Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And we're talking about just a new norm, establishing a new norm. I don't even know if my live chat is working right now, but basically, I don't even know. But we are trying to figure this out. But I just really want you guys to know that I'm really looking forward to this, and really looking forward to our time Where Life Exists. So because I don't know about the live chat and everything, we're going to end it right now. But please put your comments in the chat. Also, like the video, share it, because this is going to be the new platform. It's different than Facebook, so I'm going to be getting used to it. But we'll be back. And on Wednesday, if you put stuff in the chat, I'm going to come back and we're going to answer directly the things on the chat. And then we're also going to give you some ways to put this into the new norm. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And I see PT on here, so the chat does work. I'm appreciative of you guys. So the chat is working. Man, like it, come. This is the new norm. They told me to get on YouTube, and I'm here. So I'm really looking forward to doing that, you guys. So share this video. Go share it on Twitter. Go share it on Facebook, IG. Just let the world know Where Life Exists, formerly known as Weekdays with Dhati, is now here. So let's establish the new norm, y'all. So I'll see you guys on Wednesday, 11 a.m. Put stuff in the chat. Re-listen to the video. Put your comments in. Put your objections. Put your questions. Like anything in, and we're going to come back on Wednesday, and I'm going to take a deep dive on answering the question that you have, and we'll be doing it again Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Where Life Exists. It's a podcast about disciple making in the public square, where we talk about everyday issues from a biblical and balanced perspective. I love you guys, and I'm looking forward to building on this with you guys. Grace and peace.